We have more cases of the Omicron variant this morning emerging all across the United States.
Yeah, the White House is now stepping up its efforts to try and control this new strain, a variant that health experts around the world are still trying to figure out. Right now, 5 states have identified cases of the Omicron strain. New York is reporting 5 cases. California, where the first case was reported, now has 2. And Hawaii, Minnesota, and Colorado have each confirmed 1 case. Well, this new variant is starting to spread in the U.S. Public health officials are still saying there's no reason to panic. President Biden also echoing the same message while announcing his administration's plan to fight COVID this winter.
It doesn't include shutdowns or lockdowns, but widespread vaccinations and boosters and testing and a lot more. We knew there'd be cases of Omicron here in the United States, and it's here. But we have the best tools, the best vaccines in the world, and the best medicine and the best scientists in the world.
We have a team covering everything you need to know about Omicron this morning, from the White House response to the newest cases. We also have a doctor joining us from one of the states now reporting an Omicron case. Let's begin with NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli and MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser in New York City. So, Lindsay, let's start with New York State has now 5 confirmed cases. What do we know about those cases so far?
Yeah, Joe, Vicky, good morning. I'll tick through what we know. So one of the cases involves a 67-year-old woman in Suffolk County, that's Long Island, and she experienced mild symptoms, headache, and a cough. Now, right now, officials tell us that she was vaccinated, but they're working to figure out exactly how vaccinated. 1 shot, 2 shots, a booster, all of that. Then we have 2 cases out of Queens, 1 out of Brooklyn. Their vaccination statuses are unknown. And the 5th case involves somebody in one of the 5 boroughs, again, unknown vaccination status. And this person is suspected to have traveled recently. And so right now, New York officials are saying they expected this. This isn't a cause for alarm. They're not going to be doing any knee-jerk reactions like shutting down schools or the economy right now. Let's listen to New York Governor Kathy Hochul on that.
This is not a cause for major alarm. I need to say that because we do not have enough information. We're not having shutdowns. We're not changing our protocols.
And so, Joe and Vicki, I've been talking to doctors all week about this Omicron variant, including an epidemiologist that I spoke with last night as this news was breaking. She's a professor at Columbia. And again, she also echoes this was to be expected. This was just a matter of time because basically of how global our society is today, and that she's not going to be changing any of her behaviors, but again, making sure that if she's indoors, she's wearing a mask, or even if she's outside, if it's a crowded area, that she'll also be wearing a mask. Joe?
So, Lindsay, the second case reported in the U.S. was in Minnesota, but was traced back to an anime convention in New York City at the Javits Center, where you are right now. Thousands of people were at this event nearly 2 weeks ago. So what's being done in terms of contact tracing?
So that convention was between November 19th and 21st. That gentleman out of Minnesota, as you mentioned, he was fully vaccinated. He experienced mild symptoms and has since recovered. He was at the anime convention, and so the governor says that they have a full list of all of the thousands of people who attended. Their contact tracing, she says that process is a lot more smoothed over and efficient than it was just a few months or a year ago. But she's also encouraging anybody who was here during that time at Javits Center to go ahead and get tested. And Mayor Bill de Blasio does say that that event did require masks and also required proof of vaccination. Joe?
Mike, let's bring you in. A few of these new cases in the U.S. can be traced back to international travel. The White House announced stricter measures for people arriving in the U.S. But as we just heard from the president, he's not considering another lockdown. So what do people need to know about these new steps?
Well, the White House understands that Americans are concerned about the emergence of the Omicron variant, and the message from the president on down has been that we have more tools at our tool belt than we did to deal with this crisis than we did, for instance, a year ago when we saw the biggest surge in cases nationwide. And some of those tools involved stricter testing requirements on international travels, requiring a negative test 24 hours before departure. But the biggest ones are around testing and vaccination. The White House urging more Americans to get their booster shots, and some of this plan outlines ways in which those will be targeted. We're also seeing the White House requiring private insurers, this covers 150 million Americans, to cover the costs of take-home tests. We often talk about masking and vaccinations, but they believe testing is an important criteria. And one of the other tools that wasn't even available 6 months ago when we were talking about the Delta variant was the testing and the vaccination available for younger Americans. And that's why the plan also includes pop-up family vaccination clinics to try to get those younger children, 5 to 12, vaccinated as well.
So, Mike, during the president's speech yesterday, he also talked about the role that politics has played in the pandemic. What did he have to say about that?
Yeah, and we see the politics in this debate last night on the floor of the House and the Senate when Republicans led an effort to try to defund the president's vaccination and masking requirement for bigger employers. The president trying to take the politics out of this, though. Listen to his remarks yesterday on this.
I know COVID-19 has been very divisive in this country. It's become a political issue, which is a sad, sad commentary. It shouldn't be, but it has been. Now, as we move into the winter and face the challenges of this new variant, this is a moment we can put the divisiveness behind us, I hope.
There was concern, of course, that that Republican effort might lead to a government shutdown. Perhaps the emergence of the Omicron variant led Republican leadership to really clamp down on the efforts in Republicans to push that forward. But we did see, concerning to the White House, one Democrat, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, voting to support that amendment in the Senate. It failed, but it's a concerning sign for the president's larger social spending bill, of course.
All right, Mike and Lindsay, thanks so much for kicking us off this morning. We appreciate it.
And as we were just talking about, the second case of Omicron confirmed in the U.S. was someone who went to an anime convention in New York City, then traveled back home to Minnesota. Minnesota has been seeing an uptick in overall coronavirus cases in the past few weeks. It is something health experts are watching as we now deal with Omicron and the winter months. Dr. Rebecca Wirtz joins us now. She's an associate professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. Good morning, Dr. Wirtz. Now that Minnesota is reporting an Omicron case, we know with Delta it appeared to be more virulent, easier to catch. What are you watching for when it comes to Omicron? Is there anything particularly worrisome about this variant, or is it just too early to know?
On the surface, we'll be watching for a quick rise in cases. As your graph showed, Minnesota's cases are already higher than they've been anytime since the surge last winter. But we know that most of those cases, through sequencing, we know most of them are Delta. We'll be watching for a shift toward Omicron in the sequencing data. And certainly we'll be watching for more serious disease, although that hasn't been shown to be a factor yet with Omicron.
Dr. Wirtz, in this specific case, the person, they were already vaccinated. They also had a booster. They had very mild symptoms. So what do you think this tells us about how the current vaccines are protecting against Omicron?
You know, the case in Minnesota, several around the country and around the world have been in people who are fully vaccinated, even boosted. That tells us that breakthrough cases are going to happen with Omicron, which is inevitable. Fortunately, those cases have been mild, which implies that the vaccine still carries plenty of protective effect. We don't have enough experience yet with Omicron to know how likely breakthrough cases are or what the whole spectrum of disease will be.
And finally, Dr. Wirtz, what about your message to people who are unvaccinated? Perhaps they don't want to get the vaccine or they're relying on natural immunity from a previous COVID infection. What do you say?
My message is somewhat radical. It's time to put your affairs in order then. There's no reason yet to think that Omicron is more severe than Delta or the original COVID isolate, but those versions were bad enough. Mm-hmm. We know that people who aren't vaccinated aren't taking the simple protective measures like masking. Omicron is so contagious that it will find everyone.
Dr. Rebecca Wirtz, thank you so much for your perspective this morning.
On Capitol Hill, Congress has avoided a government shutdown for now. Last night, both chambers passed that short-term funding bill to keep the government open ahead of tonight's midnight deadline. The bill now goes to President Biden for his signature, but the fight over funding is far from over. That's an expression that NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell has heard many times. She joins us now. Leanne, good Friday morning to you. So resistance to this spending bill came from several Republicans who pushed for an amendment that would have cut all federal funding for vaccine mandates. So how was the Senate able to get this through last night?
Yeah, they were in quite a stalemate. And ultimately what happened is Leader Schumer decided to give them a vote on this amendment. Of course, this amendment failed along party lines, which it was expected. But there was a stalemate because Democrats and Republicans didn't think that this vote on this amendment and threatening a shutdown was a good idea over this issue. They knew it would fail. Let's listen to Leader Schumer and what he said, and we'll talk on the other side.
I am glad that in the end, cooler heads prevailed. The government will stay open. And I thank the members of this chamber for walking us back from the brink of an avoidable, needless, and costly shutdown.
And they did it, Joe, with 24 hours to go before the government was to shut down. So actually in Senate and Congress time, they still had a lot of time left.
It's like the equivalent of months for the rest of us. So Leanne, I mean, it was tough, though, still just getting this short-term bill passed. What does that tell us about the future of this full appropriations bill that needs to be passed in February?
Yeah, it's really difficult these days for Congress to do the basics of their job, which is to fund the government, pass these 12 appropriations bills. This is the second short-term government funding bill since the fiscal year started on October 1st. So this one goes until February. That's nearly halfway through the fiscal year that ends on September 30th. And so they're going to continue to work on these appropriations bills, but they aren't very close to being done. And the end of these negotiations are always the most difficult because that's when they fight over abortion policy and all sorts of other cultural issues. So we'll be right back here probably in February, Joe.
Yeah, especially with the midterms quickly approaching, politics on everyone's mind. So, Leanne, with the shutdown crisis averted, Congress has some other pressing issues that they have to address first before the Christmas recess, which starts at the end of next week. So tell us what's all on their plate.
Yeah, there's a few more things, including probably the most important was an increase in the debt limit. That is supposed to be lifted by December 15th, Treasury says, and Republican and Democratic leaders are trying to figure out a way to do that, and they can't seem to come to agreement on that. And people say that that is going to be much more catastrophic than if the government were to shut down. And so they're really scrambling. No one really wants that debt in the country to default, but they can't figure out how to do it just yet because Republicans don't want to engage. And then, of course, Joe, there's the president's agenda, the Build Back Better plan, this around $2 trillion piece of legislation that Democrats hope to pass before Christmas, but that's not looking good for that either. So.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, lots to talk about this morning. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Time for a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Bill Cairns joins us now. Good morning, Bill. It was downright balmy here in the Northeast yesterday.
You used balmy. I love it. Yes, it was pretty warm in the Northeast, but nothing compared to the middle of the country. Everyone in the middle of the country yesterday was like, what is going on? I mean, it was 70s widespread. It hit 80 in Kansas yesterday in one location. So, yeah, this has been an extraordinarily warm start to the month, and it continues today. I mean, it's not going to be – we went 72 and 73 in Denver for the first 2 days of December. We've never done that before, and now today is 62 degrees. But the really exceptional warmth is really spreading. Like Oklahoma City is going to be 77 today. Kansas City to St. Louis is going to be in the mid to upper 60s. Nashville to Little Rock, 75. That little number to the bottom right, that's how unusually warm it is. So if that number was 0, yeah, it was how the temperature should be. So it's about 10 to 20, in some cases 25 degrees warmer than it should be. And it's not like it's a lot warmer than it should be in D.C., but even near 60 degrees, it's still 8 degrees warmer than normal. Now, New England has cooled off today. A cold front went through last night. I know some people in upstate New York even heard some thunderstorms yesterday when that went through, which was pretty rare for December. And then into Saturday, the warmth settles for the most part from about St. Louis to Nashville southwards, still about 10 to 15 degrees warmer than it should be. I mean, Charlotte to Atlanta, I mean, does it get better for a Saturday in December? Sunny in mid 70s. The cool weather is returning, though. Our friends in North Dakota, it's over. Look at Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Temperatures back where you'd expect for winter, even below freezing conditions, 17 to 20 degrees. Some of that cold finally arrives in Minneapolis come Monday and Tuesday. So here's the forecast, and then I'll take you into the weekend, too. Today, it's windy and brisk in New England, especially Boston, only 41 degrees. Rest of the country, very mild. Not a lot of travel trouble. And as we head into the weekend, we do watch a snowstorm developing. This is with that really cold air that will be in Montana and North Dakota. It's not a lot of areas of the U.S. that are going to get that snow, but eventually it does on Sunday move into areas of northern Minnesota, almost all of Wisconsin, the northern half of Michigan. You'll be doing some shoveling come Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Just this windswept rain moving through Kansas City, St. Louis, eventually into Chicago, Indianapolis on Sunday afternoon. So, it's not a picture-perfect weekend, but I'd say about 2/3 of the country is still shaking their head saying, what's going on with this warmth? Because it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we can't complain. We've had it pretty nice. But I think in Minnesota, they're finally going to have to put their shorts away. Finally. Maybe.
They're Minnesota
Maybe,
tough out there,
maybe.
though.
Yeah.
They might try to keep doing it. All right, Bill, it's so good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.